discuss two quick issues with my panelists. We have a fairly distinguished panel here with people who have actually built enterprises, who have been successful, people who have been investing with different kinds of tools, with different kinds of vehicles. But the real discussion that we are going to have today is about the spirit with which we have actually started the whole idea of impact investing and social entrepreneurship. And in the process where we have actually been trying to make returns, reach out to a large number of people, has the substance taken over the spirit of the whole activity? The real question that we wanted to discuss is it possible to retain the spirit of making the difference while taking care of the form, which is in terms of number of investments you made, the quantum of capital you raised, the amount of investment you have taken, amount of people you actually took out of poverty, the number of people you counted and presented to your investors. Is that really the real change, or is the real change the spirit of the people who are doing it? Before I actually start the session to talk about the spirit, I actually quickly wanted to share a video with each one of you. This is a video of a gentleman called Vijay Mahajan, who was here on the panel earlier as well. Intellicap was very honored to actually give him something we call Prerna Samman, an inspirational honor. And the video would actually talk to you or tell you about the spirit that I have been talking about. So very quickly, if somebody can play the video, please.
Just trying to understand the lives and livelihoods of poor people, but from a completely free perspective, not thinking of it as a microfinance wala or as a development wala, just trying to spend time with them, understanding how in the last 20-30 years things have changed for them.
And sometimes in the same weeks, I am dealing with very poor people and their issues in villages, and then going to Mumbai and dealing with capital market and those issues.
I am much more at peace with my construct of what poor people are all about, what development is all about, and therefore feel more aligned. For example, my commitment to using microfinance for poorer people is stronger. My commitment to broaden microfinance well beyond microcredit is broader. And my belief, which I've always stated for the last several years, 10 years, that microcredit and microfinance by itself is an inadequate offering, has been further reinforced. The one meta product which is missing is life cycle finance. And really speaking, we should think of human beings all the way from birth till death. So with this, my yatra is over. Yatra is the journey that is over. But the shodh will never end, because shodh is the search for meaning, the search for truth. And I will continue to search for deeper solutions and not be satisfied till I can look at the inner contradictions of some of these solutions. Because as I've learned from experience, indeed in microfinance, for example, it's when the contradictions come out that things tend to go awry. And we need to find out solutions which are more integrated, more holistic, and which can survive those contradictions.
I think I will be able to explain the spirit question much better after you've seen this. It is a man who has pioneered a lot of us, has actually scaled the heights of success, and then has also seen the crisis that probably would have broken most of us. The key question that I actually am going to discuss today with a set of investors who are on the panel and the entrepreneurs, all kinds of entrepreneurs you have. You have actually a not-for-profit entrepreneur. Unfortunately, Reema Nanavati, who would have represented institution that has actually made a significant difference, could not make it because she had a family urgency. And when I say family, it's largely somebody within the extended family of Sefa. She lost somebody, so deep regret she couldn't make it. But we have Shardul, who is a new age entrepreneur, and so is Florian, who is a new age entrepreneur working across very difficult areas. The question, I will actually start my question with Anshu. Anshu is actually somebody who has done something remarkable over a period of time. Anshu, my question to you is, you saw what I'm trying to reach out to. You have built an institution in a not-for-profit space. You have built a very large institution at that. I would like you to first give a brief insight to the audience on what you do. And then my second question to you is, as you have started, what is it that drove you to start? And does the spirit remains true to the form that you have been? You have met investors, you have met donors, you have been asked questions, you have been asked to leave rooms, and you have not been treated kindly, and you have been loved and hugged as well. How has been the journey?
Thank you, Vineet. So, my being at Sankalp itself is, to be honest, a news to me, because the way we operate is totally different. But the fact remains that, I think we have been working only on the non-issues. The organization is called Goonj. Some of you must have heard about it. And when I say non-issues, it's very simple. Just to give a very brief introduction, that you talk about three basic needs of humankind. You say food, cloth, and shelter. And we decided to work on clothing because we realized that you say cloth as a basic need, but when you talk about development issues across the globe, you have 150 issues from domestic violence to global warming. You will never find clothing written as a subject or as an issue, although it is one of the basic needs. So it is either a disaster relief material, so you need a disaster to happen and then you support people with cloth, or it is a charitable subject object, although it's a basic need. So we started working on that. We never wanted to promote charity. Very large initiative which is called Cloth for Work now. So we go to the villages, hundreds of villages in parts of 21 states. We make roads, we dig ponds, we dig wells, we do absolutely infrastructure and different kind of activities across the villages. And then instead of money, people are paid in cloth, utensil, footwear, all kind of things. So it's basically a parallel currency which we have been able to develop. We have been able to revive the traditional Indian strength of barter system that, people in the villages actually pay us in labor and we pay them in material. So it's a barter between the labor and the material, and the money is only needed for the logistics of it. So that's the crux, I think, more on the website. Interesting journey, to be honest. Lot of rejections, lot of intellectual debates by the so-called intellectuals, to be honest, because in Hindi, a lot of people came in the earlier phase and said, "Yadi kuch kaam karna hai, to dhang ka kaam karo." I mean, if you want to do something, do some meaningful job, because I think that meaning all of us are searching is totally different for all of us. Three of us go out, a cow sitting on the road troubles you, a plastic sheet troubles me, someone is smoking troubles someone else. Although all the three problems exist there. So maybe for me, the priorities are totally different. It's not about my personal life where I face a lot of problem of clothing, but yes, a series of incidents, just to give you the gravity of it, and what drives me, to be honest. Way back in my journalism days, when I used to write and on the roads of Old Delhi, I meet a person whose full-time job was to pick up unclaimed dead bodies. He used to run a rickshaw, a thela. And later on I will be really talking about it, because there are a lot of questions related to these kind of issues or the non-issues. I followed him on my scooter in 1991 in my journalism days, and then found that his full-time job is to pick up unclaimed dead bodies for the local police. That's his full-time profession. For every dead body, in those days he was paid 20 rupees and 2 meters of white cloth. I spent about a week with him on the footpath morning till evening, and covered a large number of operations to take care of the unclaimed dead bodies. Two statements came up. First, this person, Habib, said that in winters his work goes up. Many times he has so much of work that he cannot handle it. And then I found that every 24 hours in the range of 4 or 5 kilometers where his rickshaw was able to go, he was picking up 10 to 12 dead bodies every 24 hours. Summers, the average used to be 4 to 5. He had a little daughter, Kaniz Bano, who gave the most shocking statement. In Hindi, she said कि जब मुझे ठंड लगती है तो मैं लाश के साथ चिपक कर सो जाती हूँ. When I feel cold, I hug the dead body and I sleep. It does not trouble me, it does not turn around. Why? Because we never considered clothing an issue. We never considered winters a disaster. More people die due to lack of clothing in winters than earthquake or flood, but because that is not an issue. So what I'm saying, that the issues in this country and the larger part of the world are totally different. We need to change the lens to see the problems. We need to maybe work more on the non-issues. Imagine in this country, 88% of women do not have access to sanitary pad. They use ghas, rate, mitti, rice husk, dry grass to cow dung. And we are talking all kind of things. I mean, I remember when we started making this MyPad with the help of old cloth, a lot of people came and they started talking about the medical standard, the ISO and all that. I said, listen, the day you crib about these things, I'll stop calling it a sanitary pad and I'll call it a better piece of cloth. Because when you talk about it, you talk about it thin or an ultra thin or with extra wing. I mean, those kind of things we imagine about the sanitary pad. When I talk about it, about the larger part of this country, this is about a substitute of the sand, ash, or cow dung. I'll stop here.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is really the question that I'm actually trying to deal with. The reason I picked somebody who's actually not somebody I can invest in, I picked up a man who actually has nothing to do with Sankalp per se, but the reason, because we are talking about spirit, it's important for us to realize we live in a real world, and this real world does not understand return on investments and number of human lives touched. It actually understands real challenges. I'll actually move on to somebody, Florian. You are actually probably born in Canada? Yeah. Is it Romania, lives in Canada?
That's right.
Works in Africa and works in the conflicted zones of Africa. What is it that made you actually choose such a difficult profession to make a difference? Why would you do this? Where does the spirit come from? Why would you choose something so difficult when you could have found a much easier way to live?
That's a great question. I can't say what the root of it is, why I feel compelling drive to do something like this. Part of it is the opportunity to actually make an impact is something I think my generation is very, very driven by, and that I've worked in so-called regular industry, non-socially driven, and I didn't feel that same passion. But for this specific journey that I'm working on, which for anyone who hasn't heard me talk yet, it's a low-cost surgical drill for treating patients with serious bone injury. And I got into this because in my schooling, I learned that in places like East Africa where we're working, they rely mostly on donations of equipment that's been designed for somebody in Boston or in Geneva, and it doesn't work. It fails after a few months. And when I went there, I spent about 3 months living and eating and sleeping and breathing in the operating theater, seeing patients who have the most horrific injuries that where I'm from in Vancouver would be treated in a few hours, and they would wait on average a month for surgery. and I felt that was unacceptable. And one of the key barriers to treatment, I mean, we're not naive. There's 101 barriers to effective rapid treatment, but a key one is access to affordable, appropriate medical devices. And so, as an engineer, it's within my capacity, I think, to do something about that.
So this is actually another reason. Of course, here the person is actually looked at a problem, saw himself in a very different zone, tried to create empathy, and probably is searching for the problem. The key question is, would he be able to retain the same empathy as he gets asked questions by investors like me? How much money will you make? How many of this will you send? How will you create returns? And I actually will move on to the next person, Jayesh Parekh, one of the first investors in Avishkar, who has actually seen a lot of entrepreneurs, have been an entrepreneur himself, have been a very successful professional career as well. Jayesh bhai, what is it that you look for? How do you actually, when you look into, do you look into the eyes of the people before you give money, or do you carry out a significant amount of due diligence, trying to figure out every checks, boxes, etc., trying to see their cash flow and see how you can make it? In any case, you give small amounts of money, so doing that amount of due diligence will be very expensive. So how would you deal with this?
First of all, I want to thank all the friends of Vineet for staying back, and my 3 friends from Flowering Tree for also staying back for this last session. There was this young fellow whom I met 15 years ago in Singapore, Vineet Rai, and he walked in saying that I'm looking for some funds, and I want to invest in rural India. So I said, okay. In Indian, we call it Chanda Mangne Ayo. Chanda Mangne meaning you're looking for money for grants. So you're going to give grants to rural India. And he says, no. I'm actually going to make money. I'm going to invest in equity. So I looked at the guy and thought, okay, this guy's totally crazy. He's going to invest in equity in rural India and try to make money from my money and give me back my money. Something told me about this chap that this is an incredibly pioneering effort, and this is my risk-taking ability that came out. And I said, listen, you know what, I'm going to take a risk on this fellow. I personally don't think he had all the thesis, what he's done in the last 15 years. I don't think even he thought he was going to do this. It was not pie in the sky at that point in time. But there was something about him. There was a passion about the whole concept of pioneering, concept of doing impact investing, which I don't think the term was, he used that term then. More importantly, I think not only he had this passion that he wants to do something for rural India and he wants to invest money rather than give grants, but also he had an economic sense. It just, after a few dialogues, few sessions with him, it made, to me it was very clear that this guy had an economic sense, banya buddhi, what we call in Indian. So I said, okay, here is a guy, he's got the heart in the right place, he wants to do the right thing, and I wrote him a check. To be very honest, I didn't expect anything back from it, but he's done extremely well, and so have I. What I'm looking for is the person. So again, to answer your question, Vineet, first question is who, right? Once the who works out, I can go forward. If the who doesn't work out, I'm done. I'm done with that particular investment. Once I understand who the person is, where the person's heart, especially in the social impact space, then the next you go to and ask what. What is this big picture idea? Is he going to be disruptive? He or she is going to do something which is going to make impact, financial impact, social impact, etc. The economics there, the market size is there and all that. And then the third is how, right? How is this execution going to happen? So all of this is metrics driven, it seems, but that's just piece a part of it. It has to make economic sense that this particular investment is going to work. But at the bottom line, a person like me, I'm a risk taker, and I'm looking for a risk taker. So if that person is a risk taker and I'm a risk taker, then I see eye to eye, and I'm looking for the spirit of sense. Is there something I can do to help this person? Is he open-minded and willing to take help to actually do what it is that he or she wants to do? So really, to answer that question, Vineet, my sense is that sense is a really important thing. Definitely, you need the MBAs to sift through all the data and do things like that. But that by itself doesn't cut it for me.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the reason I'm asking these questions again and again, because a lot of you are actually investors, some of you are aspiring entrepreneurs, some of you are entrepreneurs who are struggling to raise capital. The problem with capital and problem with scale and problem with more capital is that it actually starts pulling you in different directions. The spirit starts getting lost somewhere. Some call it mission drift, but that mission drift is against a metric that the investor has. It's not your mission because he probably doesn't identify with your mission. The question is, at what point of time the entrepreneur's mission overrides the challenges that the investor's mission is? And are they aligned? And is the investor overpowering your mission? Or do you yourself know your mission? There are these questions that probably some of you have not thought about. But if you have not thought them about, you would actually realize over a period of time that you are getting pulled into different directions because you did not know where you want to go. I'll go back to Shardul, who is actually a gentleman I invested in. And he has everything in reverse direction of what a normal Indian does. He was actually living in States, working for Best Buy, and he decided to come back to India to work in rural India and something trying to work with farmers. Actually, most Indians who are farmers want to go to cities and then migrate to US, do an MBA and work there. So the key question is, Shardul, why did you follow this wrong trajectory? And what is it that brought you back? And are you satisfied? And do you know what is it that drives you? Is it the idea of actually serving the farmers? Is it the idea of serving yourself differently than how you are being served? I know in US also you have a lot of trouble. You don't have people who can work for you. In India, people can work for you. So what is it that is driving you? Is it the comfort? Is it being close to family, serving the nation, serving yourself, or building an institution?
So thanks, Vineet. A lot of stuff, I think. The reverse journey for me was probably 10 years back. I wanted to go to the US because that's what, it was a cool thing at that point. Everybody, friends and family was doing that. I thought that there was something out there in the Western world in terms of experience, knowledge that I wanted to acquire. And that's why I went there. And I'm glad I did. I think I learned a lot. It was a phenomenal experience. But at one point, I started realizing that there was a lot more to me than what I could have done in the US. It's a lot about doing your own job. So it's a defined role, and you pretty much play or work within that space. You don't get the opportunity to explore. You don't get the opportunity to innovate as much as you can back here. So I was looking for an opportunity to come back and be able to probably explore and give it my 100%, which I felt was probably 30 or 40% back in the US. So Sitanshu, who's a co-founder who actually started the AgroStar, also happens to be my younger brother. We were in very close contact, and he was like, look, if you want to come back, this is the time. There's a lot of stuff happening, and maybe you want to come back. So it was a gut call. I honestly didn't even know what we were going to do. It was more about, hey, let's figure this out together. And I'm glad I didn't do a market research, or I didn't come back to figure out what is it that we were going to do. I basically came lock, stock, and barrel. And it's been a phenomenal journey after, since then. Moving from corporate America to, we basically started with a small manufacturing unit, middle of nowhere, defunct place that we were basically making organic fertilizers. And we evolved from there. I spent the first 2 years understanding what the market is, what my customers want. So it wasn't that we wanted to be in the impact space or in the social space. We just found an opportunity there. And it was the entrepreneurial spirit that got us there, and not the need to do something in the impact space. But having done this, there hasn't been a moment that I've kind of thought back and said, what did I do? It's been a phenomenal journey.
So staying back with United States of America, let me go to Jennifer from Calvert Foundation. Jennifer, we had a little bit of discussion around the idea of the spirit. How do you actually connect the West and the East when it comes to the idea? And you are actually giving away money. How do you actually connect the spirit that I'm talking about with the form and substance that has emerged from the venture capital industry that has emerged in the West, actually, and we are just trying to learn it? In some sense, the reason I'm actually questioning it is, am I asking myself a question, is aping the West and trying to implement this venture capital model to this very complex social impact investing space is the best and the brightest thing to do? You are probably the best person because you know that side, and you have probably a significant understanding of the challenge that I am facing.
Thank you. So I could answer your question many ways. But I will answer it from my own experience and my own journey. And I am at Calvert Foundation now, and I will just share with you a moment what Calvert Foundation does, because it's important to what drives me every day, what gets me up in the morning. And that is, Calvert Foundation is not a grant-making organization. It is not endowed by a wealthy individual or a family. Rather, it is a organization that goes to the capital markets and raises capital from thousands of individuals in the US, brings all that capital together, over $1 billion over 20 years, and then invests in organizations around the globe in the form of loans. So it's collective investors. We have investors that invest as little as $20 and investors that invest as much as $20 million, all alongside of each other, from all different income strata, from all different walks of life. And my journey to Calvert Foundation was one that had three big components. One is I worked in the capital markets at Morgan Stanley for about a decade and saw the enormous amount of money running around. And that didn't really lead me to anywhere because impact investing wasn't a thing yet. It just was something I noticed. Wow, there's a lot of money here. Where is it really going? And then I left, and I did not know where I was going, but I journeyed over to Australia and came back to the US and opened a yoga business. So I became a small business owner looking for a loan to grow my business, and that was a different experience. And then my last imprint was as a person that worked in a traditional nonprofit in a very large theater in New York City, and I needed to go out and raise grant capital. So I came to Calvert Foundation because it's this special place, a very special place founded 20 years ago that incorporates both investors, the capital markets. So this is not philanthropy, this is people's investment portfolios. It's the $40 trillion in the US that we're tapping into and bringing that additional capital into this now impact investing space. And we're investing in social businesses. And what struck me when I got there was that I was finally in a place that it all made sense because I had wanted to participate in my community fully. You know, I volunteer, I donate, but I wanted to invest my money. But I'm not a person of wealth, and there was no way for me to do that. When I came to Calvert Foundation, it was the first time I could be an investor. And it was the first time I was investing alongside people in my own community, in things I believed in, like women empowerment, in things that I thought really weren't mainstream in a way that they should have been. And quite frankly, most of the investors in this space are people of wealth, and there's some inequity there. There's not people from the community investing in their community. And when that starts to happen, the whole dynamic changes. The whole circle of that money flowing from one investor to someone in their community and then them getting repaid and that happening again brings a certain joy, brings a certain sense of community, brings something that I think is very prominent in the culture here in the East that we've lost perhaps in the West. And so my the founder of Calvert Foundation, I'll close with this, Wayne Silby, who's a luminary in this space, he founded this organization feeling in his heart he was bringing people to church and giving them the experience to feel what he deeply felt, but perhaps wasn't attainable or reachable for everyone.
Thanks, Jennifer. Very interesting for those who are actually wallowing in depth of despair that East is losing. This actually might please you, but that's not the idea. The idea is not East versus West. It's actually to find whether the spirit of entrepreneurship or the quest for impact, which one is winning. Let me actually go to Sunil, staying back with the United States of America. Sunil is actually chairman of iGate Corporation. A lot of us might know this. But I think I know him because of a lot of money that he is giving away, sometimes not very intelligently in my view. If I was in his place, would have found it very difficult to give that away. Sunil, why would you, who's been a successful entrepreneur, who actually has spent a significant amount of his time in the United States, who actually have come back and has started making tuck with people like me, who will keep taking away money from you. Why would you do that? Of course, we want to make a difference. You want to make a difference. But after so much success, why this desire?
Well, the short answer is a sense of gratitude, right? So when you look at my own background, grew up in India, went to the US, did my higher studies over there, started a few different companies. I never wanted to work for anyone else. My first company failed, in spite of all the passion and all this, good stuff that entrepreneurs bring to the table. And you learn some very important lessons from failures. What works, what doesn't work, what did you overlook, etc. So after that, I started 2 or 3 other companies, and they've been more successful, and a couple of them have gone public in the US, and so on. So when I look back at things, at my own life, I say, look, I grew up in a middle-class family in India. They gave me a wonderful education. My parents went through tremendous sacrifices to educate me and my brothers. They sent me to the US, got a great education over there. They supported me through this entrepreneurial journey, etc. I got lucky with, like I said, my second and third companies did extremely well. So when you add up all of those things, that I got a great education, I have good health, my family has good health, I've got financial security, etc. A lot of that happened independent of me, right? I was given the education, I was given these opportunities, etc. So at this stage, I think, when you've done reasonably well, you feel an immense sense of gratitude, and you feel very thankful. And how do you give back for all of the blessings that you've received? You try and do your best over here to help others. Now, so the way I've done it is I've been supporting NGOs in India for the last 10 or 15 years, mainly in the healthcare space, and through them I traveled to remote parts of the country, and I saw firsthand how dysfunctional the healthcare system is if you're a poor villager, right? And there, if something happens in your family that's a major health issue, you're basically screwed. You lose your life savings, et cetera, et cetera. We all know this. At the same time, I came across a large group of innovators with really interesting ideas that they were trying out on the ground to improve things. And it's not just in healthcare, it's in education, agriculture, every field you can think of. But the challenge is these innovators, and these ideas aren't just technology ideas, it's better ways of doing things, et cetera. Small, fragmented, don't have resources, et cetera, et cetera. So my approach is very simple, right? Why don't I try and find the most promising innovators out there in the healthcare space? Why don't I, through an organization over here that I've set up, my foundation, why don't we try and support them, help them to scale up, et cetera. Now, so that's the background, and that's why I do what I do. Now, coming to the question that you asked, Beneath, right? So when you look at whom to back, what's more important? Is it the passion of the entrepreneur, the social entrepreneur? Is it checking some boxes? No one on this panel is going to sit here and tell you it's about checking boxes, right? So that's a very loaded question. Having said that, I have to tell you that as an investor, as a donor, and as an entrepreneur, so I've been through this, you kind of look for a balance of two things, right? Obviously, it's not about checking boxes. But you want to work with people who, on the one hand, have passion, obviously, right? And to me, anyone who's in social entrepreneurship has passion, or they wouldn't be over there. So they have that. But you also want some sense of accountability, of performance, that I'm going to use this money the best way I absolutely can, et cetera. And the reason I say that is in the nonprofit sector, anywhere in the world, in the US as much as in India, et cetera, there are a large number of NGOs who do what they do, who do it well, but who shouldn't be raising money from other people because they don't have that sense of, not sure how to put it, of accountability, of performance, et cetera. So to me, that's perfectly fine, but don't go out and get money from others. If you get money from others, then you have to be willing to stand up and be accounted. And some of those measurements that you mentioned, how many people are you helping, how much of a difference are you making, donors do look for that. It's only natural. Now, some go to an extreme, right? You've got large bureaucratic donors, huge foundations that are more interested in you, like you said, checking off 10 pages and filling out big forms. That's overdoing it. But there has to be some sense of, look, this is what I'm getting the money for. I will treat this money with respect, and the way to do that is by doing the best that I can, helping others.
Thank you. Bringing a sense of balance. I would move to Sanjeev. Sanjeev has been a co-fellow with me for quite some time, somebody who actually has seen the difficult sides of life and is now heading an institution and giving away money to others. Sanjeev, what is it that you feel personally about your own journey? Why did you become successful? Why are you where you are? What is it that drove you?
So I don't know whether I'm successful or not. First of all, this has been a great Sankalp for Intellicap, and I must tell you that I have seen Sankalp in Bombay before, and first time at Vigyan Bhavan, so a round of applause for Intellicap team for organizing a great Sankalp. Yes, it's true. I come from a family where I've really seen hardship in as a child and struggled quite a lot. Studied in Delhi, and it's been a difficult journey all the while. Worked for some large corporates like Actis Capital, Lok Capital, and others. Then happened to meet Vineet in 2009, and the majority of my entrepreneurial journey has been with Intellicap. In that process, what I happened to see was there were a lot of entrepreneurs trying to do a lot of different things, and it's been, and they see a lot of challenges, and challenges not with respect to from where do you get money, how do you execute, and some of the examples that Shardul and all of you have presented. One large gap that we identified was how do we find that a capital can be deployed which is not dilutive, and we saw that quite a lot in our investing career in either Actis or Low Capital, and even to large extent what Vineet does from Avishkar. So if you ask me the way I would sum up my whatever I could achieve at Intellicap largely and at Intelligro was largely to do with the pain points all these entrepreneurs have seen. And pain points could be varied and many, but from my perspective, who understands a bit of finance, so I felt that probably if I'm able to understand the pain point of raising capital, then can I find ways to raise capital myself and deploy the capital in some of these companies that we have seen through this journey. So largely to do with finding capital and finding good entrepreneurs and giving them money.
Thanks, Sanjeev. This brings back to a man who's been an entrepreneur, been in a large corporate, has actually groomed leaders for tomorrow, and is now trying to groom the investors who actually have been either reasonably successful or aspiring investors as the CEO of Impact Investor Council for India. Amit, you already know the question, so I'll leave you the opportunity to answer it the way you want.
Yeah, I think everyone here has set the stage to be able for me to say that, look, the reason I'm in this room is, like all of you, I'd like to believe I also have a life social conscience. And I think sooner or later, people do eventually arrive in a room like this. I think there are some like, Vineet himself who'd start off in life and want to stay in a sector like this and build and innovate. And some of us arrive a little later in life feeling that we should continue to feel some outrage, the fact that despite all the development going around, there's so much inequity, that despite having such great leadership abilities or capital, we are abdicating our responsibility as great citizens by not doing enough, to share the responsibility of social impact with governments. So I think in my role as the CEO of IIC, I'm in this unique position to be able to connect social entrepreneurs with impact investors. And I took on this role just because I have a very strong feeling that we are on the cusp of building something very dramatic. And I want to give 2 short episodes from my own life to know why I believe that this will. In early 90s, who would have thought that there would be an industry called KPO born? I was at McKinsey in mid-90s, and there was an idea that probably we can do what was then called remote services, serve research from faraway land. And we built something which was then called McKinsey Knowledge Center. 15 years later, we have a multi-billion-dollar KPO industry. This word was not born, but I was out there watching that whole industry being born. In 98, 99, after I quit McKinsey, I joined, like many people did, the e-commerce bandwagon and had a chance to watch e-commerce, supply chain, online auctions getting born, and saw a big industry come out of that. Outsourcing, I had a chance to work at WNS and build a company which got listed on NYSE, India's first outsourcing company. Who knew that that would become a $100 billion industry? And having been through that journey, as I met this group of great impact investors, it almost felt that having come to $300 to $400 million annually from something which is not even $1 million, a very big journey over the last 1.5 decades has already been covered. This industry has been growing now at 27% year on year. The impact investments in India have grown 27% year on year. And it almost feels that with just a little bit more push, this could very well become $1 billion a year or more. And we can very well see a whole large sector being born in which everyone in this room is going to be an important stakeholder. And the idea of being in such a dramatic industry which touches lives in such a remarkable way has got to be enticing. So I think I'm in a very enviable job. Many people would want to be sitting right in the center of where all the impact investors and social entrepreneurs get to meet, and really help build these enterprises that are going to touch lives. And I think you saw that in this budget in India who was watching. Social investment is getting cut. The government cut the budget on education, healthcare, and other things. There is a growing social investment gap. And this gap is accompanied with this growing feeling that markets can solve this problem. Adam Smith's invisible hand 100 years later still makes sense, and makes sense even in rural markets. And I think the juxtaposition of all this thing, that governments are going to get scrambled as they become more efficient about the use of money, that a bigger and bigger space is going to get vacated for impact investors. And that's the opportunity. The opportunity that as government vacates this space, as they say we are open to private partnerships, or we'd like for-profit companies to be here in this sector. And the one other important signal we all saw was when Securities and Exchange Board of India created something called Social Venture Fund. And they defined it as both for-profit and not-for-profit enterprises. And I think these small signals should tell us we are about to see the ground zero swell with impact investment and hype apart the fact that we have in India seen, and I have personally seen how the outsourcing industry and knowledge, the KPO industry grow. I can't help but think that I have once again, by good fortune, arrived at the right place at the right time. So I think that's the reason I'm here, and I think this has been great forum to see how we can give push to that industry.
आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर, clarified butter and sugar in his mouth for what he is saying. I'll just take a little bit of liberty with my colleagues and take two minutes extra for this session. We've already crossed to 47, but I would give everybody a chance to 15 seconds, either leave a message or share a learning with the audience. You can start with Anshu, Jayesh bhai.
That is what is needed right now. Because I don't want this Sankalp to end on a very goody-goody note. I'm very simple about it. And I'll take Vineet 3 minutes. It's very simple. Why? I come from a very average middle-class family of India. That's an honest middle-class family. I came to do my mass communication in IMC 1990. And the annual fees in those days of the leading institute of India was 2,000 rupees. And I always feel that if this fees was 50,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees, which ideally it should have been, would I have been sitting here? The answer is no. And the fact is that I am the biggest product of subsidy of this country. And the fact also remains that all of us who are sitting here are the biggest product of that particular subsidy of this country. The people who have subsidized our education, our living, our facilities, do we really understand them as a so-called social entrepreneur or an NGO or impact investor or innovation investor, whatever you call it, but do we really understand them? That's my key question. Do we understand that there is something wrong, that so many of us learned people with so many resources sitting here, but if we put our hands on the heart, we know that hardly anything is changed. It's not pessimism. People like me can never be pessimist, but that's the reality. It's so easy to say 100,000 lives changed by people like us who spend our own, whole life and cannot change ourselves. It's so easy to say we have adopted 50 villages. When you adopt a kid in this country, you take 2 years and then your lifetime to take care of that kid. And by distributing few pencil boxes, we come and claim that we have adopted the villages. I think there is something fundamentally wrong in the vocabulary. And it's not vocabulary, it is a thought process. It is very important to understand the non-issues of this country, Vineet, because you have been asking this question. I think that's how you started about the spirit and impact. And this is the same thing we also struggle. We are about 300 people now, work in part of 21 states, deal with about 1,700 tons of material. And the problems are in layers because maybe we are not understanding the issues. Maybe because we are too worried about the figures. We only want to understand how many lives have we changed. On every damn thing on this earth, you are talking about the qualitative impact. The moment it's talk about social investment, social thing, you're only talking about the quantitative impact. I mean, if you talk to me and say that how many lives have you changed, how many lives have you impacted, I have no answer. Because I'm in the game of changing the mindset. I'm in the game of changing the thought process. I mean, that's what most of us are trying to do. So it's very important. My message is very important to relook at what we all are doing and what we all are trying to do and how we are trying to do. Are we really understanding the so-called target audience? I mean, that's the question I want to leave it here.
Good. Jayesh bhai.
So I am very bullish about social entrepreneurship and impact investing. Again, there are so many different layers of poverty. There's degenerative poverty that requires a different class of investments and grants, and there is different class of investments required for big infrastructure projects. I just want to ask you a simple question here. I think that we have a disconnect with regards to the measurement system, and I'm just going to take a poll here just to see if there is a point that can be made here. If I had $10,000 that I wanted to invest in for education in India, and if I was to educate 1,000 kids in Bombay versus with the same amount of money I could educate 100 people in Mizoram, 100 kids in Mizoram, because there is a degree of difficulty difference. Which one would you choose? All the guys who think the first one, 1,000 people, can you please raise your hand? Number 2? Terrific. I rest my case. Thank you, Vineet. This is your input in terms of the degree of difficulty, if you want to make a comment on it.
Yeah, no, I think the odd. Shardul, why don't you start? And then Jennifer, and then Sunil, and Florian.
I think for me, more, there are lots of entrepreneurs here. Of course, there are complex challenges and issues out there. But as an entrepreneur, I think that you've selected to be in the space, it's not easy. And it takes time. It's taken us 5 years, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet. And every time we felt that all hell has broken loose and we'll have to do something else, magically something else opens up. So have that faith and kind of continuing in what you believe eventually will get you to the place that you want to go.
Yeah, I'm a deep believer in impact investing being a solution to these problems with government resources declining and a limited amount of philanthropy in our world. But I would just urge this country to think about how to make the opportunity to be an investor be for everyone, not just high net worth people, but everyone.
You know what? I am very hopeful. I do see change happening. I see a lot of very motivated people doing a lot of good things, not just social entrepreneurs. I come across wonderful people in government, in different sectors of life in India, who truly are trying to do the right thing to help people who are less fortunate than themselves. So I believe change is happening. I believe the pace of change is accelerating. This is a great time to be in this field. And all I would say is to all the social entrepreneurs in this room, to the extent that you need resources, there are more and more resources available now, whether it's money, whether it's management know-how, technical know-how, connections to people, and so on. And there are more ways and channels of reaching out to these resources. So whether it's through summits like Sankalp, whether it's through organizations like IntelliCap, and so on. Conversely, for the investors and for the donors, I think the opportunities to make a difference are greater now than ever before. The quality of social entrepreneurs available, people like Anshu over here, and there are people like this in every field. You can make a bigger change now with resources than we could have done 20 or 30 years ago. So I think big change is coming.
Thank you. So I actually reflected a little more on the spirit of entrepreneurship. So I'm kind of bringing it full circle a little bit. And I thought to myself, And I thought about young Florin when I was in grade 2. And I found that the school newspaper was not interesting enough, not contentious enough, something. And so I came up with my own. And I had a lot of support from my family and from the people within the school. And as I've gone into social entrepreneurship, in this venture and my previous one, I've also found almost like it just surprises me every single time the amount of yeses that come when I ask for something or when I ask for a partnership. Everybody's very, very keen to support, and that's a really big part of it. I think there's still some barriers remaining that I think within the ecosystem, whether it's different sectoral focuses that block people who would ideally work together from actually doing so, or different other barriers that I think we still need to work on as a community to really improve efficiency. Yeah, thank you.
So for the time being, let's forget what is social entrepreneurship and impact entrepreneurship. It's just entrepreneurship. My experience is that there is no entry barrier to become an entrepreneur, but the exit is very difficult. So before you enter and try to become an entrepreneur, just think about it. You cannot exit.
I think it's great we started with Vijay Mahajan, and I want to end, bringing that spirit back into focus. I think over my years of entrepreneurship and being now in the impact sector, my advice to myself and my friends always is choose profit over scale, irrespective whether you are entrepreneur or investor. Profit over scale. Choose your spirit over profit, because we saw in the microfinance crisis what happened. But most importantly, when the conflict comes, choose impact over the spirit, because this can be a thankless journey at many points in times. And if you keep focused on the impact, your spirit will come back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end the session. I don't think so we started the panel to conclude anything, but I wanted to leave each one of you with questions that will bug you for the next 1 year. I hope I managed to do it. Can you please give a round of applause for this wonderful panel?